is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
What a fun weekend of sports that was. We had this blend of some really good NCAA tournament games. We had the World Baseball Classic with an absolute thriller a couple nights ago. And now we get to run it all back again. The WBC final coming up tomorrow. We've got more NCAA tournament action tonight on the women's side, and then more coming up on the men's side on Thursday. We got NBA, NHL for tonight too. That's what we're breaking down today. With Austin Swaim, we're going to get his read on both the NBA and the NHL and let you know where he is seeing value right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. This is Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sadas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here, as mentioned, by Austin Swaim. Find him on Twitter at ASwaim3. You can find his work over at numberFire.com. Austin, fantastic weekend in the sports world. So how are you doing on this delightful Monday?
I'm doing well, and the reason why is because I've mentally decided that it is way cooler that I had Purdue as my national champion in my bracket this year, because for years and years and years, I'm going to get to say I had Purdue the year they lost to that one seed that was one of the worst 5 teams to ever make the tournament. So I've got a story. I won't have any bracket pool winnings, but that is all right, and that means I'm doing well.
I was conflicted during that game because as a Northwestern fan, I feel like I should root for the Big Ten, but also it was a Purdue fan who dropped my wedding ring in a lake. So I was like kind of vindictive. He's great about it. He's a very nice guy. He paid for the new one. No grudges. He's great. I just was like, I can kind of root against Purdue here a little bit. So I feel bad to admit that I was rooting against your bracket. So I'm sorry, Austin. That's my bad. I feel like the ring narrative is what sunk you there, actually.
Yeah. We all kind of lean to the underdog, though. Even if it's going to break your bracket, it's like these kids that play in a gym that's like holds 100 people. It's a really cool story.
Yeah, I definitely lean towards underdogs. I picked Alabama and Houston to be in the national championship game. 2-1 seeds. Right. Chakasanis over here. So we're still looking okay in that regard. But we're going to talk more NCAA tournament stuff coming up on Tuesday and Wednesday here on the show. Dr. Ed Feng is with us on Tuesday. We'll also talk on Friday to break down some of the elite games with Austin Cass. Get his read on those. So we'll be talking more basketball on the show here this week once again. But for today, we're talking about the other basketball, the NBA, talk some NHL. We're going to check in on the NBA MVP market because there has been a lot of movement there. Even overnight last night, there was some more. So we're going to talk about that and the implications of it in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to get those NCAA tournament shows as they go up, make sure you are subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check us out over on the FanDuel YouTube page. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review or give a thumbs up on YouTube as well. This March, protect yourself against upsets with bracket parlay insurance on FanDuel Sportsbook. Austin, listen closely. Right now, all customers get up to $25 back each day if your parlay of 3 legs or more falls 1 leg short. With a parlay, you can turn a small bet into a slam dunk. With cash out, you're calling the shots. The read says I should give a parlay. I don't know college basketball. I'm not going to do that to you. So pick your own parlay. You can close out your bet whenever you want before the game is over. Just sign into your FanDuel Sportsbook account. Make every moment worth. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Must be 21 plus in select states. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Max bonus bet $25 per day unless otherwise specified. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Hope is here. GamblingHelplineMA.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts. In New York, 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with the Kansas Star Casino LLC. Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In Connecticut, 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. In Wyoming and Kansas, 1-800-522-4700. In Kansas, ksgamblinghelp.com. Louisiana is 1-877-770-STOP. In Maryland, mdgamblinghelp.org. In West Virginia, 1-800-gambler.net. Now I'm talking trash about Purdue, but I also did pick Boise State to win in my bracket. So picked against my own school. Who am I to talk? Who am I to talk? So let's shift focus here and talk about some NBA. And Austin, when I was talking to you last night, you were mentioning how you wanted to focus on the NBA MVP market because it has been a fascinating market to track here, especially the last couple of weeks. A lot of evolution in this market. And right now, Joel Embiid is minus 190 to be the MVP. It's been Nikola Jokic for pretty much the entire year. Last night, though, Embiid was minus 250. He's now minus 190. So some movement even overnight in this NBA MVP. So we've seen this shift. We've seen another shift since then. How do you see this market playing out down the stretch?
So I thought this market was done and over with when you and I were recapping awards after the All-Star break. It's very interesting because with this particular race, it gets so much media attention that you don't typically see these wide shifts in the market so quickly. But I think it started back at the end of January when Joel Embiid drops 47 points and 18 boards head-to-head with Jokic, seemed to make a bit of a point of it, right? That kind of reopened the market as we crawled into the All-Star break. And then as much as people don't want to say that team success has a massive portion of this MVP award, it apparently does, because the Sixers 9-1 in the month of March, Denver now 4-5 in the month of March, but you might have seen that line movement because they got a big win on the road yesterday over Brooklyn. And the unfortunate reality of this award is this is not a scientific process. If there was a sort of calculation or analysis I could give you that would stand to what the votes of reason are going to be, then I would give that. But it's more subjective than you think. And a lot of like team level beat writers, they can't watch every single NBA game, every game of Giannis, every game of Embiid and Jokic. So they kind of lean on these these catch-all metrics like I just happen to look at all the time. And for the first time since 2019 at this late in the season, Nikola Jokic is actually not the leader in player efficiency rating. It's actually Embiid by the tiniest of margins, 32.0 to 31.8. But could this shift again? Absolutely. These two go head-to-head in Denver next week, one week from today on Monday. And I think that is a huge seismic shift point on national television when we saw Embiid really start his candidacy with a similar head-to-head matchup. I almost think there's value on Jokic at this number. It was plus 380 last night. Looks like it is whatever we have for plus 300 right now and moving. So it may not even be the same by the time you get to it. But I have Embiid from plus 250 earlier this month. So just like as a personal strategy thing, I'm thinking about taking Jokic to 3-1 for one unit just to lock in a guaranteed profit no matter which guy ends up pulling out and getting ahead. But there's definitely a turning point for such a long number on the board at 3-1 for Jokic, in that he could re-overtake the player efficiency rating metric. Denver could win more games coming in. I think this thing's going right down to the wire. So a number that big is very intriguing to me.
Now, the one concern with that, with the hedge with going with Jokic, is that Giannis Antetokounmpo is also lurking here. He's down to plus 440. Yeah. Is he a consideration for you? Like, do you think that he has a realistic shot, or is it really going to come down to just Embiid or Jokic in your mind?
I don't, because the Bucks are already in the 1 seed, I don't think there's a team success element that they could necessarily have. And the thing about Giannis, he's fighting a thumb injury. He's fighting a knee injury. Anthony Davis is a similar guy where it's really hard to see them making progress in some of these individual races when they are having to sit out games just because the body is failing them. Jokic and Embiid have been active for several games in a row now. So I don't see Giannis as a realistic third challenger, but if these two were to fall off, or, one guy gets hurt and then Embiid starts to fall off, that's, I think, where you get Giannis is the obvious third choice, and then the others are just long shot darts at this point with a clear established top three.
Yeah, so I think the clear inflection point lurking in this market is that game you mentioned, the head-to-head match between the Sixers and the Nuggets coming up. So if you decide that you like Jokic, I would be trying to lock that in before then, because inflection points are always something we want to identify in markets, and that is a big one coming just around the corner. Okay, let's shift our focus now and talk about tonight's slate in the NBA. It is a 6-game slate. And Austin, let's start things off with the more traditional markets here in the NBA. Any value you see right now over at FanDuel Sportsbook?
So I love this Warriors Rockets over. It's sitting at 238 on FanDuel Sportsbook at -110. The Warriors have just been an over machine on the road this year. That the conversation is about how they can't win games on the road. They've only won 7 games all year, but I especially look at their defense on the road. 26 of 36 Warriors road games have gone over the projected total this year. So that's a great trend to see that the market's kind of really having a hard time letting go of what the Warriors are at home defensively. And they have a 126 defensive rating on the road this month, which is just awful. It's 126 points per 100 possessions. The Rockets have a 115.5 defensive rating at home too. So they are not a good defensive club. The Warriors are not. These are 2 top half teams in pace. I've got this line like personally closer to the Warriors games we saw this weekend against Memphis or against Atlanta. One of those had a 247-point total in Atlanta. I would take this line up to 243. I see another really high scoring game and competitive game when you're not getting stops on the defensive end, and they still played a lightning quick pace. Golden State #1 in the NBA in pace.
And the wiggle room note you made there is important because this total has ticked up a bit. It is now 238.5 at -110, so up a half point there. So it does look like there is some interest in the over in this game for the Warriors and Rockets. Again, 238.5 right now, -110 on the over there. Anything else you like in the more traditional markets in the NBA?
Yeah, so I also find this a little bit of a whack-a-mole type of betting line because the injury report is so deep in this one. But I kind of like the Mavericks on the road here. They were sitting +100 last night. Now they're sitting +114. So the line moving the other way. I'm just kind of reading the tea leaves on the injury report here. Luka Doncic said he hoped to return Monday, practice fully Thursday. So I think he is in a pretty good spot to return from a 4-game absence for the Mavs tonight. Kyrie Irving played 39 minutes extremely effectively. They need to win this game. I really can't see him sitting it out. But the late addition yesterday of Jaren Jackson to the injury report, to me, he is the single most impactful Grizzly for betting. Maybe not the most flashy, maybe not the guy who most scores the points, but They have a plus 11.3 net rating with him on the floor, minus 1.9 without him. That's one of the biggest splits in the league for an individual player. It's probably why he's going to win the Defensive Player of the Year award. If he is even remotely at risk of playing, I love Dallas in this game, but I think I would even go ahead and take the nod on the fact that Luka and Kyrie will return. Memphis offensive rating has been in the toilet since Ja's been out, and he's still out conditioning for this one. So I do like the Mavs as an underdog on the road here.
So right now that spread is +2 for the Mavericks and -110. The money line for the Mavericks +114. Preference for you between those two markets?
I was on the money line at +100. I think I would still remain on the money line. If that spread continues to creep, my fear is that Jackson is going to play. That's the sentiment and the information that's being gathered. So I am totally fine taking the Mavericks to win right now. I'd probably stay away from this entirely if we got very early news that Jackson was going to play. But the late ad in NBA injury reports is never good news. That is not good news as far as the guy's availability for that night. So seeing Jackson last night was certainly a concern.
Okay, so that's 114 right now. Keep an eye on the health for that Mavericks-Grizzlies game, but potentially check out the Mavericks money line for that one. What about player props in the NBA? Anything stand out to you there tonight?
So, Jim, I'm going to play a little bit of a narrative. It's not based on the narrative, but I am going to note we have a kid returning to Indiana who went to school at Butler. I'm going to take Gordon Hayward from the Hornets over 19.5 points and rebounds, sitting at -122 on Sportsbook. I am picking on Indiana just like I did last time I was on with you. The Pacers really are an interesting defensive matchup. You could argue they're starting 4 traditional guards, even including Aaron Nesmith, who's playing quote-unquote power forward for them. They allow the 3rd most rebounds in the NBA because they just don't have very much size. And the Pacers specifically cede the 3rd most points and 7th most rebounds to combo wings, which is how I classify Hayward for my day job over in NBA Daily Fantasy on FanDuel. So it is a great matchup for him, and I expect him to take more shots. Only took 4 shots on Saturday, but he's averaging almost 11 this month. So I think he's more aggressive offensively. He is a real threat to just score 20 points here, but if I add in the boards in a plus matchup there, I do really like that combination for him in a little bit of a homecoming, right?
What's the statute of limitations on a homecoming narrative? Because Gordon Hayward is he's getting up there. Does that expire at any point? I think I love narratives, so I should know this. I should have a rule for this. But do you have a baseline number as far as number of years before that expires?
I think a decade could be fine. I mean, when you have the shot that is still getting played on NCAA tournament highlight reels that you and I have been watching all of the past week, I think that's fine. It's a little bit less special that the Hornets visit the Pacers far more often than his Jazz did back when he was in Utah. They'd come once a year. Whereas, you get 2 or 3 trips into Indiana, it's like, okay, give it a rest.
Right. Okay. I think the fact that it's March, maybe that adds to the narrative. That extends it a little bit longer. So Indiana in March, maybe that's the narrative we go with here. The number was Hayward over 19.5 points plus rebounds. That's -128 at FanDuel Sportsbook. Okay. Before we wrap up NBA, anything else stand out to you before we close up shop?
I think I've already bitten off more than I can chew on just a 6-game slate. So let's talk some puck.
I love it. Let's do that. It's a 5-game slate on the NHL side of things. What you see in there, starting with the traditional markets, Austin?
So I'm actually going to go against my favorite team, which is probably a good sign. Anytime someone's going to say, "Oh, this doesn't look good for my favorite team," that's someone you should listen to, because that is fan pessimism and knowledge coming out. But I actually like the Chicago Blackhawks +1.5. They're visiting my hometown Colorado Avalanche here. Number sitting at very heavy for a 1-goal spread, +146. It is really about the number here. Just 40.7% implied, but we expect here at numberFire Chicago to cover 57.3% of the time. So a huge gap. I get it. Nobody's rushing to bet on the Blackhawks, especially if they've cleaned out their talent after the trade deadline. But there are two prohibitive things working in the Blackhawks' favor here. The Avalanche are not scoring a ton of goals at present, 12th fewest expected goals per 60 minutes since February 1st. It's really hard to cover a spread if you have trouble scoring yourself. You can be dominant defensively, win 1-0. The Avs aren't scoring very well right now. And the second thing is that the Blackhawks projected starter, Alex Stalock, he's actually been stellar this year. He's like a piece they can build on despite the lost year. He has 7.10 goals saved above expectations. And GSAX is a cumulative stat, kind of like WAR in baseball. The fact he's only played 20 appearances so far and already has that many goals saved above expectations, he's been excellent. So I think you could even give the goaltending nod to Chicago here. Maybe he stands on his head a little bit. And this is about the juice, but I do think the Blackhawks keep things tight at Ball Arena tonight.
Yeah, that is +1.5 for the Blackhawks and the puck line at +140, as you mentioned. They've had some 2.5s recently, so they're the market not very high on the Blackhawks as of right now. Justified, you get it for sure, but it's still a big number for sure. Anything else you like in the NHL for tonight, Austin?
So we're going to look at a very intriguing game. Western Conference wildcard race is heating up, and the Calgary Flames visiting the Los Angeles Kings. I like the Kings money line here. They were sitting -114 last night. Looks like they're -113 right now, so it hardly has budged. But if you're a Los Angeles fan, you really should owe your entire playoff-bound season to Phoenix Copley, the netminder for LA. Rescued one of the worst goaltending situations in the entire sport. You're talking about two of the worst 8 guys in the sport by that GSAX metrics I gave you. Copley's been very good, 7.50 GSAX. Jakob Markstrom has really struggled here for Calgary, and he's at a flat 0 as far as that metric. That is 58th out of 92 qualifying goalies, so he has not been very good. Los Angeles has the goaltending edge here. These squads both top 6 in expected goals scored, top 4 in expected goals allowed. So these are two of the hottest teams in hockey, playing the best right now, but one of them has an excellent goalie. That is Copley at home on rest. So I do like Los Angeles to win. And by the way, numberFire's model has them about 65% to win here against 53% implied. It's its favorite bet of the day.
That is a wide margin for sure. So that's the Kings money line, their overall money line, not to win in regulation. Overall money line -113 for the Kings against the Flames for tonight. How about player props? What you seeing there for tonight?
So I saw one that was kind of interesting. I'm going to look at a game that isn't going to be very competitive, and I don't even know if I'd recommend to watch the Oilers and Sharks in Edmonton. The Sharks kind of limping home here, but I do like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins over 1.5 points. It's sitting at +140. When I get a matchup this good, it's a little bit, kind of square, but I think I'm just going to take it because Nugent Hopkins has scored 11 points in his last 8 games next to Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid on the power play. Sharks allowing the 3rd most expected goals since February 1st. So they're struggling defensively recently. Here comes this offensive juggernaut in Edmonton with 2 of the best guys in the sport, and RNH gets to play alongside. And He's really playing a lot. The thing about Edmonton, they're not very deep, so even in blowouts, they play their guys quite a bit. Nugent Hopkins over 17 minutes of ice time in every single game since the All-Star break. And some top shelf forwards don't even average 17 minutes on the ice. They just play their dudes a lot. That helps with the blowout potential, especially in a matchup like this. numberFire hasn't projected for 1.36 points at a median, but when I've got plus 140 juice here, that is a really good proposition for Nugent Hopkins in such a delightful matchup.
Yeah, so 1.36 the average there, and you're getting if you're getting to 2 points, that's not a bad mark. Plus 140, so you want, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially if you are thinking that they keep their guys on the ice despite a potentially wide score. I think that all makes a lot of sense. So again, if you go to the Sharks and Oilers points/assists market, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins over 1.5 points is plus 140 right now at FanDuel Sportsbook again for the Sharks and the Oilers matchup. All righty, Austin. That's all we got for you for today. I want to thank you for coming on once again. We'll get you back on here again in the very near future. Go recoup after a fun week in sports, and we'll talk to you again in the very near future.
Sounds good, Jim. I'll see you soon.
All righty. That is Austin Swaim. Make sure you check him out on Twitter at @aswaim3. Now, do want to go back through last week's show before we close up shop for today. Just recap the show here, both in terms of the NCAA tournament and the NASCAR race in Atlanta, just from a transparency perspective. Let's start things off with our 2 NCAA tournament shows last Wednesday. Those were with Austin Cass and Ben Stevens. Ben Stevens at Sports Grid, Austin Cass at numberFire. Check out Austin on Twitter at Austin Cass. You can find Ben on Twitter at Ben Scott Stevens and find him on the morning after on Sports Grid as well. Let's start things off with Austin. He previewed Thursday's games. The one future that he liked was Drake to make the Sweet 16 at plus 420 or Kent State to make it at plus 520. And both those teams were competitive in the first round. Neither could advance, but they did keep it somewhat close. So competitive games couldn't quite get there on those kind of long shot futures to make the Sweet 16. As far as individual games, Austin went 2-2. The wins were Northwestern over UCLA, over Boise State. That would have been sick. Northwestern over Boise State at minus 120. And then they had the Auburn, Iowa over at 151.5. Auburn, Iowa first half was a brick fest. They could not make a shot either side. Second half, though, they hit the over pretty easily still. So over 151.5, a win there for Austin. And again, the Northwestern money line against Boise State. The losses for Austin were Utah State money line against Mizzou, and then Oral Roberts plus 6.5 against Duke. So tough luck in the Oral Roberts one, given how poorly they played early on in that game. It kind of made it where it was a non-competitive match. But again, check out Austin on Twitter at Austin Cass. We'll have him back on Friday. We're going to talk some college basketball with him then to preview the Elite 8 Saturday games. The Oral Roberts game also bit Ben Stevens. He mentioned he liked the over on their team total at 69.5. They, again, couldn't get a bucket early on, finished with 51 points. So couldn't get that one there. But the Friday bets for Ben were 3-2. The wins were FAU money line at plus 102. He had Miami minus 1.5 against Drake at minus 120, and then Creighton minus 5.5. The 2 losses for Ben were Gonzaga minus 8.5, the first half line, and then Kent State plus 4.5 in their game. So overall, about 50-50 on the show here last week on the college basketball side of things. I think the bracket advice from Ed and Bennett is looking pretty good so far, given they were lower on Purdue and Kansas, pretty high on both Alabama and Houston. So that looks good so far. Still a lot left to be decided there, but we'll see how things play out on the NCAA tournament side of things. As mentioned, Ed is back with us tomorrow to talk about the Thursday games in the Sweet 16. I ran through NASCAR stuff on Wednesday's show for Atlanta. Podium bets I mentioned there were Bubba Wallace plus 650, Eric Jones 11-1. Bubba wrecked pretty early, got 3 laps down, couldn't make those laps up, so he finished, I think, 27th in that race. Jones, no podium at plus 111 or plus 1100, but top 10s did go better. I had Eric Jones there plus 250, Austin Dillon plus 360, Ty Gibbs 6-1. And then those were like the 3 like locked in ones I liked a lot. Other ones where I was showing value, so my favorite was Michael McDowell, though I was less high on him. The Gibbs one hit. He ran well the entire third stage. You know, he kind of hung out in the back early on, but he ran really well. I thought that he actually showed a lot of patience, which is always a concern with Gibbs at a track like this. He was pretty good though. So the Gibbs 6-1 cashed. Dylan did not plus 360. I'd mentioned Corey LaJoie on the show at 5-1. Didn't lock him in as a bet here. He wasn't the betting guide at numberFire, so hopefully you read that in addition to checking out the podcast here, but no credit for that based on just the show. Jones plus 250 top 10. Qualified poorly. He got loose on his warm-up lap. Qualified 28th. So starting pretty far back. And he ran pretty far back the entire race, was not aggressive, didn't try to do anything, and I'd kind of written him off as a loss. He crossed the start-finish line to get one lap to go in 17th place. He then wove his way through traffic and finished 8th. NASCAR's official Twitter account put up a video of his in-car camera. He went 3 wide 2 separate times, got a massive push down the back straightaway, finished 8th. So I'm not sure if I deserve to win that, but I'm going to take it every single day. I think that it was it was still a good process because he's a very good pack racer. We saw that skill in the last lap, and that matters. We saw the finishing order was very pack-esque with LaJoie in 4th, Ty Gibbs in the top 10. You had Jones up there in the last lap as well. So I think the process was good. Maybe it was lucky in terms of results, but I think that the process was there. So good week for top 10s with the Gibbs 6-1, Jones plus 250. Hopefully you grab LaJoie at 5-1 as well via the betting guide. But overall, felt good about that. COTA, the Circuit of the Americas, a road course coming up this week. I think that's going to be a fun one. We'll try to find time to talk about that likely on Wednesday, I would guess, when we have some time to talk college after we talk college basketball. So either Wednesday or Thursday, breaking down some NASCAR at Circuit of the Americas. That is all that we have here for today's show, though. Once again, a big thank you to Austin Swaim. Check him out on Twitter at aswaim3. Find his work over at numberFire.com. I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. If you want to get our NCAA tournament shows as they go live throughout this week, make sure you are subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. And again, if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review. And also check us out over on the FanDuel YouTube page. Good luck to all of you tonight. If you're betting NBA, NHL, we'll talk to you once again tomorrow to break down the Sweet 16. This has been Covering the Spread right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.